What I tell guys is that unfortunately, nice is boring, especially to the feminine. The feminine, I'll make a generalization, kind of like in those television shows, does seem to like a little bit of drama, a little bit of tension, a little bit of he loves me not. What's next? We men, especially nice guys, we want certainty. Let's lock this thing down. The guy's going, wait a minute. I did all these nice things for you. I'm not the jerk. I listened to you talk about the jerk, and now you don't want to go out with me. So nice guys put themselves in that friend zone by repressing anything that might create a little bit of tension between them and the woman, anything that might create a little bit of spark of arousal.
Okay, Robert, welcome to the show.
Nails, good to be here. As a pause, I thought you were going to do a little bit of an intro. So yeah, it's good to be here. Like I was just saying to you, you're like the fourth person from Dublin I've talked to in the last week. So I'm excited.
100%. So to get started, Robert, could you maybe give us your definition of what a nice guy is, and why did you write your book, No More Mr. Nice Guy?
All right. I'll start with the second question first. I wrote it because I am a nice guy. I'm now a nice guy in recovery, and at the time I started exploring my own uh, internal roadmap and direction finder. I was a marriage and family therapist by training, so I was working with other men and women, and guys were coming into therapy, and they were saying the same things I was saying about my relationship to my therapist. And in the groups I was attending, I was saying, I'm a nice guy. I'm one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. I treat her better than her ex. I'm raising her kids. I give her everything she wants. It's never good enough. She's never happy. When's it going to be my turn? She's angry all the time, and she never wants to have sex anymore. So I was hearing those. Man, I can finish these guys' sentences for them. I also didn't make as direct a connection, but there was another type of men that were coming to me for therapy, and they were also saying, I'm a nice guy, but it's a little bit different scenario. They were single. I'm a nice guy. I have lots of female friends. I don't connect well with men. Women tell me what an amazing guy I am. I'm there to listen to them and help them, get over their ex that they don't seem to want to get over. And they all tell me, oh, some lucky woman is going to be so fortunate to have you someday. But they don't want me. They don't want to be my girlfriend. So I started noticing this meme of nice guys. And I thought, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one who thinks if I'm just, a good guy, I'll build up this scoreboard of credits and good deeds, and I'll be universally liked and loved, and I'll have this great life. So, what is a nice guy? So, I'll give you the quick, the elevator pitch version of it, and then we can back up on that a little bit from there. But a nice guy is somebody that's doing two things. Number one, he's trying to become what he thinks other people want him to be, so he'll be liked and loved and get his needs met. So he's a chameleon of sorts, always kind of reading the situation. So like if I was being a nice guy with you, talking with you, every time I got that nod of your head, I'd go, good, good, I did that right. And if you smiled, good, good, I've made him smile. And but if you kind of looked perplexed or looked up or even looked angry or like your body language kind of closed, I'd go, oh no, I must have said. So I'd be constantly reading my environment to make sure I got it right, to make sure everybody's happy, to make sure I had approval and external validation. So that's number one. Related to that, second thing that nice guys are trying to do is that they tend to hide anything about themselves that they think might get a negative reaction. So, and I'll talk in a minute where this comes from, but usually the things that nice guys hide. And by the way, this applies to women as well. There were nice girls around long before I think we saw this epidemic of nice guys. My mother was a nice girl. I was trained to be a nice guy by my nice girl mother. So that second thing of hiding, usually we're hiding our feelings. I say in No More Mr. Nice Guy, nice guys are afraid of two kinds of feelings, their own and everybody else's. So we tend to repress our feelings because that might trigger a negative reaction in people. We hide our thoughts, our wants, our desires, and especially our sexuality. because culturally, we're bombarded with so many negative messages from birth about sexuality that most nice guys keep it really pushed down, really hidden, really repressed. And that has a lot of unfortunate side effects and consequences that we can chat about as well. But all of this dynamic is, for lack of a better term, or maybe the best term is the neuroses. Because I define a neuroses as something that we developed, a belief system, an emotional response, a behavior we developed at an early age to help us survive when we were vulnerable, dependent, needy, and so we all do this to some degree. Every infant, when it has uncomfortable experiences, tends to internalize that number one, that they're the cause of it. Now, this isn't thinking, it's at an emotional level. I caused that painful experience. It's a grandiose belief that infants have, children have, and maybe I can prevent it. So, one thing that pretty much all of us do from an early age is whenever we have an uncomfortable experience, whether we're hungry and we're not fed, we're cold and we're not wrapped up, we mess our diaper and we're not changed, we try to manage the uncomfortable feelings we're experiencing in that moment. So maybe we cry, maybe we sleep, maybe I sucked my thumb till I was in kindergarten. Maybe I was managing uncomfortable emotions. Every infant develops some way of trying to manage their uncomfortable emotions. The second thing that we try to do on a very primitive emotional level is try to prevent whatever caused those uncomfortable emotions from happening again. That's my definition of neurosis, trying to manage those uncomfortable feelings and trying to prevent them from happening. So whatever may have we perceived before we could actually perceive as infants as adaptive, we carry that through childhood, adolescence, it gets cemented in, we bring it into early adulthood, and now that becomes our guidance system in adulthood. So nice guy syndrome is just one of many different neurotic guidance systems that we're using in life to try to be liked and loved and get our needs met, to try to avoid pain, to try to avoid uncomfortable situations. And we all have our own way of doing that. And nice guy syndrome is just one way. So that's kind of the nutshell of nice guy syndrome. And why I wrote the book is because I, started doing my own work around that after my second wife said, everybody thinks you're such a nice guy, but you're not. You can be mean, passive aggressive. I can't trust you. You embarrass me. You hurt me. You need help. And I thought, well, you're the one who's unhappy all the time. I'm trying to make you happy. But that was the core problem. I was trying to do something that was beyond my power to do because that was part of my survival system from infancy, make the people around me happy, and then I'll be okay. So, and every nice guy's got their own story. We all developed these patterns in our own unique ways. There's many similarities across nice guys, but we've all got our own unique story to tell of how I got to this place of thinking I have to become what I think other people want me to be and hide anything that might get a negative reaction.
There's so many points in there I want to kind of touch on. One that really stood out was what you were saying about, in early infancy, this was an adaptive response to circumstances that were far less than ideal, and then this then becomes part of the person's sort of behavioral repertoire, and they carry this for the rest of their lives. And it involves sort of becoming almost needless, or trying to make themselves almost needless, and or being very indirect about getting their needs met, like not ever expressing that I have needs, or I have these things that need to be addressed.
That's very common in nice guys, and I still address that in myself. Men I work with, talk about it in the book. When I talk about the things nice guys hide, their needs and wants is really high up there, but for various reasons. I've worked with so many nice guys, and I'll talk about making their needs a priority. And they usually get that deer in the headlight look of, oh no, that's terrible. I can't do that. That will make me selfish. That'll make me a bad person if I make me a priority or put my needs first. So they've internalized again an inaccurate belief that somehow them having needs is bad. It's going to lead to negative consequences. It may lead to a punishment. And oftentimes it can be from a number of reasons. It could be, one thing about I realized pretty early on about nice guys is that, we got this whole nurture nature debate that, has existed since we could examine ourselves, and it will continue to exist. Are we nice guys because we were born that way, or are we nice guys because we learned to be that way? And I often think it's of course some of both. Most things are. But a lot of the men I work with do have, I think naturally maybe easygoing temperaments. I think I've always had, I'm kind of, my mother has told any number of women that I've dated or had relationships with. My mother said Bobby never did like conflict. I don't know if that's her way of saying be nice to my son, but I'm thinking, yeah, who the hell likes conflict? I mean, I don't. I never have. I can't. Can we just have a rational discussion and talk about this and resolve the problem? But I seem to be attracted to people who like conflict. So apparently there's people out there who like conflict, right? I don't. That's my temperament. I'm just kind of like, let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. So I think even my natural temperament affected the way I internalized my life experiences as they were happening to me. I have three siblings, two are dead. And I think their temperaments affected how they interpreted, pretty similar circumstances in the same families. We grew up together. We're all pretty close age-wise and all very different. And my two siblings that are the most different from me are the two dead ones. And they were most like my father, who was also the most socially maladaptive person in the family. So I think inherent temperament does have something to do with this, how we internalize these events. But so it may just be that there's some children come out, they're just not real needy. Other children pop out and they just seem to be needy all the time. And I don't want to use that word needy in a derogatory way. Some children just demand more. Other children don't. You can just watch babies as their natural temperament. So I think some nice guys just doesn't matter. Whatever you want to do, whatever you want to eat, wherever you want to go, I'm fine with that. So it's almost kind of like I don't have needs. We'll make your needs a priority. But for a lot of guys, having needs almost feels like a crime, a sin, that they're going to be found out, they're going to get in trouble, they're going to get punished, they're going to get left. And that is the fear that a lot of nice guys have. I'll get in trouble, I'll get punished, I'll get hurt if I have needs. Part of that could have been conditioning in childhood, of the experience of when we had needs, of the painful experiences we had around that. Often, I think, is when a child gets old enough to perceive in his family that there are some extremely needy people. Maybe it's an alcoholic father, maybe it's a depressed, narcissistic mother, maybe it's a sibling with illnesses, or somebody had an accident, or something where their needs became the priority. It might even be a sibling that just was acting out so much that all the family attention went to that. That was the biggest need. So this young child is internally inaccurately internalizing, oh, it's better if I don't have needs. It's better if I help everybody else get their needs first. Then maybe once their needs are met, then my needs will get met. Or I just won't have needs, so I will never be a moment's problem. I've heard so many nice guys say that. Yeah, I'm needless and wantless. I was never a moment's problem. Oh, my brother and my sister took up all the attention. Oh, my father was so needy, or my mother was so dependent and depressed. So they've internalized this belief having needs is bad. And it's a piece I've had to work on. I still work on it to this day. My father was needy and demanding, so I tried to be different from my father. I tried to be different from all those controlling men I heard women complain about, or all the men who only want one thing from women. Okay, I don't want to be like that. I want to be the nice guy. So even to this day, if I'm sitting with my family at a meal, my wife and two kids and my two stepkids, and if I need a fork, and if I get up to walk from the table into the kitchen, I don't know, 30 feet, a few meters into the kitchen, my wife will say, "What do you need?" And I'll go, "A fork." And it's all in Spanish because my wife's Mexican. Yeah, necesito un tenedor. And she goes, "I'll get it for you." No, I can get it. And that's my gut response. I can get it because I can. I can walk into the kitchen and get my own fork. But I realize my gut impulse is don't burden her, don't put her out, don't, I can get it because then I'll be needless and wantless, and I won't be a bother to anybody, and plus I can go get it easily enough. But I also realize, because she's told me this, we've had conversations. She says, you do everything for me, you give me a good life. Let me show you my love in the ways that I can show you love. And so now when she says, where are you going? I'll go, oh, I just need a fork. She goes, I'll get it for you. I'll go, okay. And I sit back down and I let her get me a fork, right? That's hard to do, right? Or if I'm just taking the garbage out, I'm just taking it from the kitchen out through the front gate out to the street. She'll go, do you need help? I go, no, I'm okay. Because I don't need help. I can take the garbage out. But I realize she's not really asking me, do I need help? She's saying, can I join you? Can I be of service? Can I connect with you? And so now say, yeah, sure, come give me a hand. Just one bag of garbage from the kitchen to the street. But yeah, come with me. So my basic impulse is typically don't ask for help, don't let people help me. If they do help me, I feel kind of uncomfortable, awkward, maybe indebted, even bad, right? And so that's been a big thing. Even learning how to delegate. I mean, I run two different companies, and I've got employees, and that's been the hardest thing for me to learn how to do is to tell people to do things. And I usually, can you do this? No, it's their job. I can just say, hey, take care of this, by this time or when you get a chance. So even learning to delegate responsibility to people I pay has been a learning experience. Now, I'm not uncommon when it comes to nice guys. That's one reason we often fail to live up to our full potential and kind of stay stuck in many ways is we tend not to let our needs be known. We don't ask for help. We don't express our desires. We make it difficult for people to give to me. Every woman I've ever been in a relationship with has said, Robert, you're difficult to give to. So I think there must be truth to it because I've heard it enough times. So, and they're right. I am. I'm pretty self-sufficient. But I tell you what, the more I let people give to me and the more I ask, the more people want to give because people get pleasure in giving, the more my life is blessed and the more I have left over to give. So it's kind of an interesting paradox for nice guys to grasp that if you actually let people give to you, fill your bucket, you actually have more to give to other people rather than you giving all the time from an empty bucket because you're not getting your basic needs, wants, and desires met. So this is a real core piece. And if you want to, we can dive into the concept of covert contracts that I talk about in No More Mr. Nice Guys, of how nice guys do indirectly try to go about getting their needs met.
Yeah, I want to get into that later. But I just want to sort of underline a few things there. So you were sort of saying in early life, you might have internalized a belief that maybe you had other siblings that were maybe causing a lot of trouble and all of the attention was on them. So you learned, okay, so the way for me to sort of get by and survive in this environment is just to sort of keep myself really small and not draw any attention to myself.
That's a
And then
pattern for many nice guys, not all, but many.
yeah, yeah, well it makes a lot of sense. And I suppose what I'm getting at there is if whenever you make these things explicit, then you bring them sort of to your awareness, and then you realize, oh my God, like that's kind of what's driving my behavior. Then you're more free
Right.
to change it. But you also mentioned at the start of this conversation that you're a nice guy in recovery, and it's sort of like a phrase you'd hear somebody say in Alcoholics Anonymous. So, I'm curious,
Yeah.
is this an ongoing process
I'm
for
a
you, where you're
grateful, recovering nice guy. Yeah.
so you're viewing yourself as a work in progress, and this isn't like it's not like a before and after. But something I did want to ask you, how has this changed your life going from being a nice guy to, I think you would call yourself maybe an integrated man now or whatever? Like what's the before and after picture here for someone that's sitting here listening to this going like, that sounds a bit like me. What might it look like if I was to move away from that?
Yeah. So there's about three or four questions in there. Let me see if I can pull them apart. Yeah, I do use the term recovering nice guys. Men will ask me because men ask these kind of questions. How long is this going to take? Because that's the way we are, right? Give me the diagram, give me the schematic, give me the steps, walk me through it, and then I'll be done, right? And it's kind of like, going to your doctor and saying, when can I be done taking care of my health? Or going to the gym and talking to your coach and saying, when will I be done exercising? Um, it's a process and it's ongoing. And where I believe I've come a long way, and I can give some contrasts of that, a long way in terms of where I was at when I was 30 to where I'm at now at 68. Um, I still see my nice guy patterns show up. And here's where they tend to show up. I talk in No More Mr. Nice Guy about the foundational dynamic of nice guy syndrome is toxic shame. That's that internalized belief. I'm not okay. I'm not good enough. I'm bad. Right. And by the time I published No More Mr. Nice Guy, it took me about 5 or 6 years to write it, about 3 years to get it published, and it's been out for 20 plus years now. I was continuing to work on myself with nice guys, and I came to also realize that probably anxiety might be close to as big of a foundational piece of nice guy syndrome as shame. So most nice guys are trying to manage their shame, I'm not good enough, and manage their anxiety, however that may be. The shame part of my own personal recovery, I it rarely pops up anymore. I might get defensive every now and then if somebody accuses me of something. I'll go, "Oh, okay, that's a shame response." I think they're saying I'm bad, so I can watch that. Um, I've actually watched it come up. It's kind of funny. I was on an interview yesterday, and I noticed about a third into the interview, I kind of felt the urge to go to the bathroom. And and I felt shame about that. Like, oh, I just need to hold it and get through. And I watched myself going, that's weird to have a little bit of shame that I have to go to the bathroom. And I made it through the interview without having to go to the bathroom. But it was kind of entertaining to watch that. But my shame doesn't usually um, show up all that much in my personal relationships or life. My anxiety still does. It will still show up in the relationship with my wife. She'll get a look on her face and she'll kind of body language and she'll maybe get withdrawn, a little rigid. If I'm close to her, she'll get kind of quiet. And I just have this anxiety that runs through my nervous system. Like it feels like I'm gonna die. Okay, here's this short little Mexican woman that I didn't even know 10 years ago, right? I love her dearly. I'm grateful she's in my life. But if I put it in perspective, if this, woman had gotten that look on her face, when before I was in a relationship with her, would it make me feel like I was going to die? No. So I realize it's not about her, right? My anxiety response is in my nervous system. It's a memory of something. Now, I'm not even 100% sure what it's a memory of. What was it? Was it the first nurse that looked at me when I was born? I was born with a cleft lip. Did I get that kind of a scowl, disgusting look? Um, was it from my mother who kind of hard and like, oh, I could just wring your neck? I remember her saying at times, I could just kill you. Okay, those aren't good things to say to a kid, by the way. My mother was a pretty decent mother, in a lot of ways, but yeah, she was human. Was it my grandmother who raised me at times when I was young? Maybe if I pooped in my diaper, did she get that disgusting look? I don't know. I don't really know. Right. I'm not really sure. It's still under a certain number of layers of that onion they talk about peeling back. Right. But what I do know is that when my wife gets that look, I'm not going to die. She's not going to kill me. She's not even going to leave me. She's not going to even stay mad at me for very long. Right. And so I can bring a conscious perspective to my nervous system reaction. And I've learned other ways of dealing with that, either soothe myself, have a conversation with her, detach, go contact a buddy, go to the gym and work out. There's ways I've learned to just feel the anxiety, but not try to manage it. Right. So that's how it still shows up.
How do you soothe yourself in those moments whenever it does show up?
That's the question that nice guys in my men's group kept asking me when I started talking about anxiety, 20 something years ago. So can we talk about soothing again? That's what made me realize it was a big deal. You know, Number one, I breathe. You'd be amazed. I breathe because when we get anxious or stressed, when we go into our sympathetic nervous system, our breath gets more shallow, more tight. And we get like this, and it imbalances the oxygen, CO2 in our blood. And all we really have to do is we can just open up our shoulders, a little bit diaphragmatic breathing. I often just put my feet flat on the ground. So I have a little mantra. When my wife gets this look, I have this mantra. And anytime I have stress or anxiety, I ground. I kind of move my energy downward in my body. Any sport, martial arts, almost any physical activity, you're taught to ground, to kind of get solid below. So I ground myself. I'll regulate my breathing, nice, easy, and slow. I'll do it like, for example, on interviews all the time. I'll just check in with myself several times during a call, make sure my feet are on the ground, I'm sitting up straight, breathing, nice, easy breath. And And then, so part of that mantra is I'll ground, I'll breathe, I'll open, just open to what is this experience? What's happening here? Because usually we close, right? We close, we shut down. We want to manage the person or the situation so we can quit feeling anxious. I'm more of a fan of soothing our anxiety internally so we can let the situation be what it is and respond as needed rather than react. Kind of that Viktor Frankl quote about responding rather than reacting in that moment of stimulus. And so, and then get curious. That's so I got these 4 points: ground, breathe, open, get curious. What's happening here? Why is she? Why does she have that scowl on her face? You know, if I just go into my sympathetic nervous system, I want to run, flee, fight, fawn, make it better, whatever. But if I can just ground, I can actually get curious. I know she has a ruminating brain. She can kind of get wrapped up in certain thought patterns. She in a pattern about me, about her family, about the kids, about, some woman that gave her an evil eye look. I don't, how many times my wife said, that woman gave me that look? I go, okay, what look? Guys never say that for some reason, but women do. She looked at me. Okay, all right. Take the advice you give your daughter. Ignore her. So if I can ground and get curious, I can stay present. And then, again, I can either, you want to talk? No. What you got on your mind? Nothing. Okay. Nothing usually means something, but all right. When you're ready to talk, let me know. And then I can just stay present. I don't withdraw. I don't shut down. I don't try to fix it. I don't try to talk her down. I don't get mad at her because she's got that look. And then usually, if I just breathe and sit with it, go do a little work, go do a little exercise, send a message to a buddy, how you doing? Just something to just redirect my focus, my nervous system. I'm usually fine. And then it lets me, when she is ready to talk about whatever that is, I'm fine. I'm making an adjustment in one of my businesses. So I didn't have to, I got to actually lay off 4 people. And, because I just don't need them because we did some restructuring that's going to save me some money in one of my businesses. So it's a good thing. Now, laying off 4 people that I care about, you know, created, some uncomfortable feelings. So even in that situation, rather than being the nice guy and putting it off or being indirect, I just did the same, soothed myself, dealt with it sooner rather than putting off dealing with it later, which is really direct with the people, let them know what was coming, talked about it, told them why, told them, how we would make this transition. And, I got through it just fine. I could not have done that 15 years ago, 20 years ago, to have actually, laid off 4 people, all part-time workers. So it's not the end of the world for any of them, but, still they're going to lose some income and, some steady income. So, I had to deal with my uncomfortable feelings. And again, that would have been really, really difficult for me to do. Even just 15 years ago, I would have put it off, would have felt anxious about it, would have rehearsed ways of talking about it rather than just saying, hey, we need to talk about your job situation and just let's have a conversation. And so that's a difference from before. Now, yeah, the me at 30, like I said, I was trying to make everybody happy. If anybody was upset or uncomfortable, I was trying to make that better. I used to say I was sorry for everything. I did a 1 year moratorium on saying I was sorry back in my early recovery days because my sorries were counterfeit. They didn't mean anything. I said I was sorry for even things I didn't do. If somebody was just upset about, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And somebody one of my clients used a phrase the other day, toxic positivity. I thought, I like that term because that was me. Oh, it'll be okay. Don't worry about it. Everything's going to be all right. I was always like trying to talk everybody down or through. I also did a moratorium years ago where I went a year without giving gifts because I was always giving to get covert contracts. Oh, my wife will like this. Oh, my kids will like this, or this person will like that, or, I'll send them, this card, or I'll buy this, or I'll buy that. And it was all, and again, I didn't let anybody give to me, but I was giving to everybody else. And it had strings attached, which was mainly approval, or you'll read my mind and give to me. Even though I'm going to make it really hard for you to give to me, you should. So I've gone through various stages of making those change. Another really big change was learning to be honest. Nice guys, you'd think a nice guy would be pretty truthful and authentic and transparent. Typically, we're not, because if you're trying to read and become what you think everybody wants you to be and hide everything about you don't want people to know about, you're not particularly honest, authentic, or transparent. So nobody could believe really anything I said, pretty much everything I said. I mean, I didn't like make up big, bold lies like to impress people or stuff like that. But if I thought somebody might be upset with me, oh man, I'd try to spin the story in whatever way I could to talk them down and through and over so they wouldn't be upset at me. So one thing I started doing is I started working on these patterns in my life is that with my second wife is when I started doing this. If I was going to lie to her, if I noticed the lie coach in my head coaching me, tell it like this, leave that part out. Oh, don't let her know that. I think she's on to you, misdirect, Whenever that lie coach would give me instructions, I would tell my wife, I was going to lie to you. Here's the lie I was going to tell you, and here's the truth. And what was really interesting, she never reacted or got upset about that. Now, she did if she could sense I wasn't telling her the truth. She could really sense that incongruence. So I learned to be much more honest and trustworthy. If I tell people something now, they know it's the truth. There's no spin. There's nothing left out. There's nothing they're going to find out later. And so that's a big change in me. And for me, two of the biggest visible changes is number one, I've got a lot of guy friends in my life. It used to be I always sought out the approval of women, and that's a common nice guy trait. So I really worked with men around building community, to connect with other men, to learn to be vulnerable with other men, to be supported, accountable with other men. And so I've got lots and lots of good guy friends in my life. So that's very different than how I was, you know, 25, 30 years ago. And maybe the other really big change is that I think I'm a lot closer to living up to my potential, to really, firing on all cylinders in my life because I face my fears. I can ask people to help me. I can delegate. I can now kind of get out of my comfort zone and do things that make me anxious. I'm more honest and trustworthy. I say yes to more situations rather than kind of thinking them over forever, over researching them, talking to everybody about it. If a door opens and I think that's a door that needs to be walked through, I walk through it now. Used to be I didn't. And then I'd regret, oh, I wished I'd done that, wished I'd said that, wished I'd, taken that person up on that offer to do X, Y, or Z. I say yes now. I say yes to a lot of things. A very good dear friend of mine who's passed away used to say it's a sin to say no when you should have said yes. And that's changed my life. I say yes to so many things. They used to be I would have just, percolated about for a long time and never actually pulled the string. So that's a few differences in my life that are visible from, when I started this work 30 plus years ago to where I sit today talking to you.
That's beautiful. I'm just writing that down. It's a sin to say no when you should have said yes. The thing that really stood out for me there, Robert, when you're talking about the soothing and a few other things, the feelings themselves haven't changed, and the situations are no different. But what is changing is how you're relating to those feelings whenever they do appear.
Yeah.
And you're coming from a place of curiosity, and it sounds like you're probably activating your prefrontal cortex there as opposed to these very innate nervous system responses, and you're
Yeah.
coming from a place which makes all the difference.
And it begins with being able to observe. And I think that's the biggest difference. Have those anxiety impulses gone away? No. Probably they're not. They're probably more moderate than they used to be. It used to be probably when my amygdala fired up, the fight, flight, freeze. It probably happened frequently and for many different things. Probably happens less frequently now for fewer situations and contexts. But the big difference now is I know it. I know when I'm anxious, right? I feel it. I can feel myself tightening, closing, reacting. I watch patterns come up that are familiar. I can catch it in milliseconds or, second, two or three. Maybe it takes me 30 seconds sometimes to go, oh, I'm in a victim place. Okay. And just notice it with no judgment. And then again, I can ground, I can take my breath, I can open, do I do this perfect? No. But do I do it many times better than what I used to? Yeah, mainly because I notice it and I notice it quickly rather than it just taking over and turning into a reflexive, you know, response that I just think is normal. Me yelling at my wife and saying hurtful things to her seems like a really rational thing to do if I'm in that reactive place that built into because I wasn't noticing or paying attention to it. So yeah, the ability to notice it and then have tools to do something different with it is night and day from what it used to be.
For sure, for sure. You also mentioned about you're you're in a space in your life now where you feel like you're realizing more of your potential and you're living up to the person that you could be. And that's one of the things you talk about in the book as well, that nice guys, they're almost terrified of doing this. And you know, I'm actually reminded I used to play sport at a reasonably high level when I was younger. And there were times when I might do something that would go beyond my normal capabilities. Like I might like do a really good move or score a really good point. It was a sport called Gaelic football in Ireland.
Okay, I was going to ask you what sport you're playing. All right. So I don't know what that kind of football looks like. Is that more like soccer, as we'd call it in the US, or more like American football, or more like rugby, or what's it look like?
Think of a combination of soccer, basketball, and rugby all thrown into one. It's a pretty crazy game, but it's good fun.
Did you have to drink quite a bit before you get started or afterwards?
Always after, always
Always
after.
after. Okay.
Um, but the thing was, whenever I would do something like that, I would notice internally my reaction would be it would almost be like, right, no more of that, like back to basics. That was a
That's
one-off
interesting. Yeah.
sort of thing. And I was like, fuck is that? So it was almost like there's part of me wanted to play small as a way to as a safety mechanism. So I just wanted to get your thoughts
Well,
on
that's a beautiful metaphor, really. And the fact that you noticed it, right? That you even noticed it at the time. That was really insightful because, I'm going to guess that most people maybe don't have that kind of reflective insight about themselves. And especially one that we would get, again, curious about. What's that about? I just did really well beyond what I normally do. And that makes me uncomfortable. So, and having worked with a lot of people and myself, I don't think that's an uncommon response, is that, you know, we all find a comfort zone in life. We all do. Now, some people either just because of again their personality type or maybe experiences they've had in life, maybe live more at their edge. Just kind of, I know, for example, I know a lot of guys with ADHD, and they're more at their edge. They climb rocks, they ride their motorcycles 150 miles an hour, stuff like that. Because in that moment, with the adrenaline and the cortisol, they're focused. They're actually calm, right? So some people do get more at that edge. Whereas most of us do find, we have these kind of parameters of our comfort zone, and we tend to stay in there. And if we have a flash of brilliance, that takes us outside the comfort zone. We don't know what's out there. Most of us, there's a book called Escape from Freedom, written by Eric Fromm after World War II. And the basic premise is he was talking about fascism and Nazism and why people are attracted to things like that. And the basic premise is we're afraid of being free. And basically, we're afraid of being untethered, right? Think about any outer space movie you've ever seen. It's really about the existential fear of being untethered, of the unknown, of what's going to happen. Here we are on this little rock in space, and we're secure. We're on planet Earth, and then when we leave it, we have to go in this existential angst until you get far enough away and go, that's just a little rock in space. There's nothing secure about that. Oh, I'm in my spaceship, kind of Major Tom, David Bowie song. I'm in my spaceship. I'm in my tin can floating through space. Now it's time to leave. And now in the movie, you leave the spaceship, and now maybe the asteroids come or the aliens come, and your tether's cut off, and now or maybe Hal won't let you back in. Whatever it is, often this is dealing with that existential angst of we need a tether. It's an illusion of some security. Now, the tethers we use might be, money. It might be the security of family. It might be religion. It might be, our performance. Look, I'm good at this. It might be our self doubts keep us. We all tend to find ways to keep us anchored and tethered in a zone that feels comfortable for us, that doesn't create too much existential angst of the unknown and what am I going to spin off into, right? What's out there? And so, because we humans are kind of afraid of what's out there. There's a few pioneers that they go out there, but most of us stay here, right? So when you did exceptionally well, you were in a zone that's out there. Whatever we might even call that. We'd even call it a zone of genius. There's a lot of things we could call it. But because it was outside your normal zone of where you kept yourself tethered, that felt familiar, it felt safe. I'll say, most people want to hang out in the old neighborhood, even if it's a ghetto, because it feels safe and it feels familiar, right? Going outside of those zones of comfort create anxiety and again the unknown. What if you started performing at that higher level on a regular basis? I mean, you don't know. Are you gonna have higher expectations? Will you be more visible if you fail? Will you lose the familiarity of this team and have to go up to the team at the higher level? What are the consequences? You don't know, right? You don't know. Just a quick example when you said that performance. My son, he'll be 39 next week, and he's a wildlife biologist. And he's actually running an experimental orchard at Washington State University, where he got his 2 degrees in Washington State. And yeah, I'm really proud of him. He loves animals. He loves the outdoors. My granddaughter's soon going to be 18, and she just like him, loves the outdoors. Well, they did this. My son at this orchard that he runs, the veterinarian department had all these orphan baby owls. And they brought these owls out to the orchard and they put up these boxes and to where the owls now can live there in the orchard. And they'll probably grow up and leave, apparently. But they kill the rodents and stuff like that. And my son sent me pictures of all this, a month or two ago while they were doing it. Well, then apparently the university sent out a press release about this and mentioned my son. And so that was pretty cool to see that press release and a picture of my son, on a ladder with these owls. And then city newspaper nearby, Spokane newspaper, ran an article. And then just yesterday, the Seattle newspaper, where I'm from, where I grew up, I live in Mexico now, reprinted the same article about my son. It's pretty cool. He's got that something like that could go viral, right? These orphan baby owls in an orchard, and who knows. And so I messaged my son this morning. I said, "Have you gotten any more requests for interviews? Because he might blow up, right? This might go, viral." And I'm wondering how he's doing with that. Does he have anxiety? Oh, I'm visible now. People know about the orchard. People know about the owls. Maybe people are coming out and checking it out and visiting. Maybe other newspapers are calling him. And saying, "Hey, can we talk to you about this thing?" I don't know. Yeah, we haven't talked since all of this kind of blew up. Well, I'm thinking I'm so proud of him. This is really a cool thing. I'm sharing this with friends and family. You know, he may be sweating bullets. He may be going, "Oh man, I don't want all this visibility. I don't want to be famous." I don't know. We'll find out because he doesn't tend to go seeking limelight, in those kind of ways. So those kind of things can come along and we'll actually unconsciously do things to get back into our comfort zone, to back into the familiar. Like you say, go back to playing small. That's okay. The majority of us do that more than what we realize. But the good news is you can notice that and say, what were the conditions that led to that higher level of performance in that moment or led to that, opening that led to this? And you don't have to get overly analytical, but you can be curious. I love that curious thing. You get curious about it. Then you can get curious about why did that scare me? Why did that make me uncomfortable? What did I then start doing to go back to play in my familiar zone? I think Gay Hendricks calls that upper limiting. Where do we hit that upper limit of our performance level? The more we can just notice that stuff and get curious, the more I think that keeps expanding that zone, that upper limit, to where we can keep performing at a higher level to where that begins to feel comfortable and normal. And then still knowing, there's probably other levels. I've had conversations with people who know me that, I say, this is kind of hard for me to talk about. It's kind of hard for me to say on an interview. But I'm reaching a certain level of notoriety myself because of my book that's been out for 20 something years. Within certain spheres, I'm fairly well known in men's work. Yeah, I'm a fairly household kind of name. And that's taken me a while for my identity of self to catch up with that reality that Yeah, I am fairly well known. Interviewers mention me in the same sentence with, David Data, who wrote Way the Superior Man, with Jordan Peterson, with Robert Bly, and I'm going, wow, those are all pretty impressive people. And so that's taken me a little while. I remember I was sharing with a men's group that I'm in. We meet every other week, and they've known me for at least 6, 7 years. And I was sharing that I said, I think I'm about to cross a threshold of being fairly well known in certain circles. And one of them said, Robert, you crossed that threshold a while back. And I go, yeah, I probably did. It's just, but because it's outside of, that zone of comfort, even acknowledging I've crossed that threshold feels awkward, right? Feels awkward. So this is what we all get to deal with.
That's so interesting. And just want to go back to the curiosity thing just very quickly. To me, this seems very central. And I interviewed a lady called Janina Fisher, who's a clinical psychologist who works with, at the time the interview was on addiction. And she was saying one of the things she does with her clients whenever they relapse is she'll say, "Oh, this is a golden learning opportunity."
Hmm.
Because when you take that approach, then you're curious, and there's some neuroscience finding that curiosity actually activates the prefrontal cortex. There's some study been done. I can't remember what exactly it was.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So whenever you're doing that, whenever you're coming from a place of curiosity, you're moving out of these nervous system responses and you're accessing this sort of wise adult self that is in a far better position to make decisions and guide you as opposed to these deeply ingrained things that you learned in early childhood, you know?
I think that's a good. And I do a practice with people that that have what I call ruminating brain. They get kind of caught up, in their thinking all the time, and usually it's a very critical voice. Rehashing past mistakes, missed opportunities, predicting the future, usually in negative ways, measuring or comparing themselves. And what I have them do is for like 6, 7 minutes, 3 times a day, set a timer, go to a quiet place, and I'd say consciously obsess and ruminate about what you've been unconsciously obsessing and ruminating about 24/7, day and night, in your dreams, in your sleep, while you're driving, while you're making love, while you're eating, while you're playing sports. And I'll say only obsess about it for 6 or 7 minutes consciously until that alarm goes off. And it's funny, most people cannot stay focused on that one thing, even for 6 minutes consciously, while yet it spins in our unconscious 24/7. And often most people feel really relaxed. It's almost like a deep meditation afterwards. You think obsessing about something that is as a negative energy in you would make you feel bad. But it actually really shifts the nervous system. And my theory is kind of like what you were just saying. I think what it does is it shifts us out of the our survival part of the brain down on the brainstem and the amygdala that keeps us in sympathetic nervous system and moves us into a prefrontal cortex. Maybe we're now more in the parasympathetic nervous system to where we're looking at it in a more analytical, constructive, rational way, not this I'm going to die kind of way. That because the amygdala really is all about life and death. And so once something gets down in the amygdala and we're in sympathetic nervous system, it is. Do I need to fight? Do I need to run? Do I need to hide? Do I need to freeze and be still so I don't die? Right. So I think there's a lot to that. If we can move things out of, down here in the brainstem, up here in the prefrontal cortex. And I know there's a lot of other processes involved, probably hormonal and otherwise that I don't know and understand. But I think the simple story, I think that's a pretty good version of maybe what's happening.
Definitely, definitely right. So we haven't got that long left, Robert. But something I really wanted to ask you about in this conversation was about why does nice guy behavior tend to repel women? And
Oh, I mean, you can't save that till the end of the conversation. That's a whole interview right there.
we have time. We have time. So could you just tell us about this? And you know, and again, this is a generalization, but we just have to do it for purpose of this conversation. But there's a difference between what women say they want and what they actually want.
Well, that's a generalization, but I think most of us men have found that generalization to be often true. Um, that yeah, they'll say, I want a nice guy. And they keep going back to the ex who's a real jerk, who, uses drugs, cheated on them, stole their money, sleeps with their best friend, all that kind of stuff. But they keep going back to that guy while they talk to the nice guy about what a jerk their ex is, but they can't get over him. You mean that kind of thing? Of they say one thing and do another?
Exactly. Exactly.
And that is the part that is confusing to nice guys, because we do want to take women at their word, right? We do want to take them literally. What kind of even going back to really everything we've been talking about, so much of what we humans do happens at a very unconscious level for unconscious reasons. And they're even beyond our own understanding and perception. Um, I remember one time when I was married to my second wife, I was my two step kids. I raised two of her kids, and they were in mid-adolescence. Maybe my stepson was 12 and his sister was like 15 or something at a time. And my son was watching a teen drama on television, maybe 90210 or something like that. And it was drama. And of course, it's the young women in the show creating drama, right? Doing whatever they show them doing that creates drama. And my 12-year-old son is just kind of watching this, perplexed. And he turns to his sister, who is sitting like on the couch doing her homework while he's watching TV. And he turns to his sister and says, why do girls do that? Referring to whatever, the girl character is doing in the show. His sister looks up without a pause, say, how the hell do I know? I don't know why I do what I do half the time. And I thought, okay, let's just go with that, right? We don't know why the hell we do what we do half the time. So when we project onto women, why do women do that? Well, a lot is driving their behavior. It could be early childhood experiences. It could be epigenetic. It could be evolution. It could be a lot of things. Maybe that jerk that she keeps going back to has a degree of fierceness that in her evolutionary DNA says, he could fight and protect me. And maybe when the nice guy approaches, he's sweet and he's calm and he's, passively pleasing. And she's going, that guy couldn't, protect me from a rogue spider, and so there's nothing to activate that evolutionary trained piece that goes, I want to feel safe. So it's probably something along those lines. And what I tell guys is that unfortunately, nice is boring, especially to the feminine. The feminine, I'll make a generalization, kind of like in those television shows, does seem to like a little bit of drama, a little bit of tension, a little bit of he loves me not. What's next? We men, especially nice guys, we want certainty. Let's lock this thing down. And so many nice guys, there's a lot of influences in this. My mother told me when I was a boy, she was raising her sons, my brother and I, to be different from our father. She later apologized for that, for both saying that and doing that, right? Of projecting this, your dad's bad. I want you to be different, right? But I was raised to be different from the bad men. I grew up in the angry feminism of the 60s and 70s that, every man's a rapist and erection's a sign of aggression. I mean, all this toxic masculinity, just different words, but it's the same story that's been out there. I didn't want to be that guy. All the women that complained about the jerks that just wanted one thing. I didn't want to be that guy. So by trying to not be that guy, I repressed any sexual energy or desire. And here's a common nice guy paradoxical behavior that doesn't work. And that is if I hide my sexual agenda from a woman, she'll want to get naked with me. It just doesn't work, right? It just doesn't work. So I tell men, women don't put us in the friend zone. We put ourselves there. Because as soon as we're trying to get the woman's approval, get her validation, get her to like us, practicing what I call nice guy seduction, be different from the other men, don't be angry, be a good listener, help out, do things for her, volunteer, use those covert contracts. I'll give to you, then you'll like me and appreciate me, want to be my girlfriend and get naked with me, even though I haven't given you any indication I want to get naked with you. And then when maybe he does say, I don't guess you'd want to go out sometime, she goes, me? You're my friend. I couldn't do that. I never even thought about going out with you. And the guy's going, wait a minute. I did all these nice things for you. I'm not the jerk. I listened to you talk about the jerk. And now you don't want to go out with me. So nice guys put themselves in that friend zone by repressing anything that might create a little bit of tension between them and the woman, anything that might create a little bit of spark of arousal. Now, I think a core piece that comes into this, we can get a little Freudian here, is that when when little boys are small, they go through, I think at least two or three phases in their developmental where basically they want to possess their mothers. They want mommy all to themselves. It's the Freudian Oedipal thing. I want my mommy. I've one of my coaches, he wrote in one of his books, he said, little boys go through that phase of saying, I want to marry mommy when I grow up. And he said, little girls actually never do that, say, I want to marry daddy. Okay, I'd never really noticed that per se, because I mainly raised boys. I've had two stepdaughters, but I kind of came into their life later. So I was never the daddy they wanted to marry. Um, and so the boy wants to possess mommy, and the boy wants mommy to be all approving of him. And that includes their sexuality. A little boy will, come prancing into the room about 3, swinging his dick, hoping, mommy approves of him. He may try to touch mommy's breast, mommy's butt, seeing, will because he wants to possess his mother. It's a pretty normal developmental phase. And they move through it and kind of going back to the edible story. If mother has good boundaries and is nurturing without smothering or hooking up an emotional hose to her son in any way, and if dad is available and safe, the boy moves through that phase because mom has good boundaries, and the boy then connects with his father and moves more towards the direction of the masculine, a kind of a form of masculine initiation that cuts the ties with the feminine and moves him into the masculine world. Now, that rarely happens, though, unfortunately. So, for a lot of little boys, mother either didn't have the boundaries, or daddy wasn't safe and available, or the biggest fear the little boy had at 3 or 5 when he had sexual impulses towards his mother was, I better repress this because I want mommy's approval. I don't want her to think I'm bad. So what then happens is we get into what we typically call the Madonna whore complex, is that these men only see sexuality going towards the lesser women, the bad women, but you hide your sexuality from the good women. It really is part of what has led to, like, in Europe for centuries, men have a wife that has their children, but they have their, their prostitutes or their affairs, maybe lifelong, over on the side, right? So it's the same thing. The good woman, non-sexual. Sex is for the bad women. So what happens when a guy becomes a teenager or a young adult and sees a woman whom he would like to like him, she's now in the good woman category. I want her approval because she's the good woman. I will hide and repress any sexual desire and agenda with her, which then makes it impossible for her to feel any kind of sexual vibe towards him. And then often what happens is that sexual energy the man does have goes underground towards what we might call more the whore archetype of pornography, massage parlors, prostitution, call girls, Instagram models, just all that sexual energy goes over there. But whenever he wants the approval of any woman he wants the approval of, he'll have in the good woman category. He'll hide his sexual energy and desire in his sexual self. So all of these factors and probably more go into that of why, in general, women are not overly attracted to the nice guy. Now, kind of the exception of that is often a woman who's either had a lot of trauma with men. And so with the nice guy, she feels safer and less of that trauma. And so nice guys tend to get with a lot of women who have past trauma. And the nice guy can feed on that. Oh, I'll help you. I'll help you get, the diamond in the rough that they're going to get better. The other pattern I've seen is women that we might identify as either having borderline personality or narcissistic personality. They will tend to bounce between what I call the asshole jerk, the bad guy, the bad man who treats them bad, but they have all this drama and tension and hot sex with, and then they get burned out of that. Then they go try on the nice guy for size, and then basically eat the nice guy's lunch. I've had that experience. Most nice guys have. So there's the kind of the exception. Either the nice guy either bores the woman and does nothing to turn her on, or he does a lot of nice things for the traumatized woman, kind of polish the diamond in the rough and kind of creates a toxic relationship really from the beginning, a codependent, borrowed functioning relationship, or they get with the borderline narcissistic types and create a trauma bonded addictive cycle that is next to impossible to get out of. So those are kind of the three patterns I tend to see with nice guys in the relationships.
And a key to this, it seems, is that it's important for men to be able to create emotional tension in relationships with women. So how would you help a nice guy that is totally unfamiliar with doing that, just doesn't know how to do it? How would you help him to begin creating emotional tension in his relationships with women?
Oh, I would create a course on that and teach him in that, which is what I've done. I've got a book about three quarters written on the subject. The problem is about 5% of the nice guys I teach this to get it and really blossom. The rest of them go, that's too scary. I'm not going to give me a technique, give me a tactic, give me, a poll question I can ask, give me this, give me that. So they turn into what I call geeks with techniques. And because I talk about creating, when a man consciously creates the emotional tension with a woman that women tend to crave in order to feel attraction and the sexual desire and connection over time, it's actually I say it's a very powerful masculine initiation because the problem around the way I teach emotional tension, I call it PET, positive emotional tension. And I say that in general, I'm making generalizations, but most feminine identified creatures, whether they're a gay man or a straight woman, need that emotional tension to feel attraction and desire. A more masculine identified person, straight guy, lesbian woman, maybe, tend to want things nailed down and calm. Let's just give me the solution. I'll do it. I don't want tension, right? If you think about it, guys' emotional tension is pretty much limited to, sporting events and maybe adventure movies. And they all have a clock on them. When you were playing, was it Gaelic football or what? It had a clock, probably. You knew the tension was going to end at some time. Feminine, there's no clock on the tension. It's 24/7. It goes. And just when you think it's it couldn't be more, they take it to the next level. They perform at that higher level you were talking about, right? So the masculine wants things, it's kind of like the masculine and just the yin and yang, just wants to rest in nothingness, right? And the feminine is chaos. It's just constant movement. So teaching men about this concept. Number one, it breaks their brain, breaks nice guys' brains. So I go, how could it be that women like emotional tension? How could it be they like drama? I don't. I want everything cool and calm and smooth and easily to work out. Give me the schematic and make it work. Once the machine's fixed and running, it should stay running. That's the guy view of things. So to even convince a guy that in general women actually like a little bit of attention, a little bit of a tease, a little bit of your unavailability, a little bit of you say telling them what to do in kind of a loving way, you setting the tone and leading. The guys are going, they like that? Because the guy's going, whatever you want to do, dear. Do you want to do something tonight? What do you want for dinner? And women tell me they hate that. The guys think I'm being nice. I'm giving her options. The woman's going, fucking make a decision. Okay. I make decisions all day long. Make a decision. Let me just relax into that. Right. So it's a challenging concept for men to grasp that women would actually like emotional tension. And I'll say, well, even beyond what, I'm telling guys, if you can create what I call positive emotional tension, things that activate women in a way that just feels good for you and for them, great. And I'll say, but whether you create positive or the woman's going to create negative emotional tension, whether it's the criticizing, whether it's the flaking, whether it's the ghosting, whether it's the whatever it might be, flirting with your best friend. For the woman, she doesn't care if it's positive emotional tension for everybody or negative emotional tension. Pet net, it doesn't matter. She just wants to feel the emotional tension. And when women say, "Oh, I'm not like that," I don't think women are really like that. Yeah. One guy was saying I polled 4 or 5 women, and they're all educated, and they all thought that was the silliest theory, and they all rolled their eyes at it, this and that. And I go, That's funny because eye rolling is one of the ways that adolescent girls create emotional tension. And, as a therapist, I've had mothers who brought their adolescent daughters into therapy. I'm not making this up, multiple times. And the major complaint the mother had was the daughter rolled their eyes at her. And that just got, the mother, ballistic about she disrespecting me. She's giving me that look, rolling her eyes. And I go, really? Now I'll look at the young woman. I go, you do that to your mom? You roll your eyes at her? And she'll just kind of look at me, doesn't say a word. I'll go, give me your best eye roll. I want to see it. Come on. Come on. Really, come on. And they'll go, no, no, come on, come on. You can do better than that. Give me your best eye roll. And I'll get playful with the daughter about the eye roll. And it kind of just takes all that crazy energy that the mother and daughter have built because it works, right? It works. They both have co-created a system with tension and drama because they both desire it or it wouldn't be there, right? So even, helping men understand that, and men just shake their head, go, I don't get that. Why do they like that? I go, you don't have to figure out why they like it, but you have to know they do, right? You have to know that they do, because otherwise you're going to keep putting out all those fires. I call it putting the wet stuff on the red stuff. Get the fire hose out, get the fire out as quickly as possible, get everything back to copacetic, good, no flare-ups. And the women are just going, I'm bored. What can I do next to create some tension? And again, I'm making generalizations because everybody's different, but that is a pretty common pattern. Again, I'll break it down more towards, masculine identified creatures and feminine identified creatures, regardless of sexual orientation or what you're attracted to. There's usually a more masculine and feminine pole in most relationships. The more masculine pole usually wants things calm, good, copacetic, predictable. The more feminine pole goes, let's fight. Let's have some trauma. Let me withdraw from you for a while, and get your attention. And that's just a common pattern. And I've seen on an interview the other day, I think gay men and lesbian women understand this dynamic far better than straight couples do. Kind of straight couples where we've got this kind of vanilla homogeneous, men and women are all the same. Let's just get rid of any signs of masculine, feminine tendencies. Gay men, lesbian women seem to know you need a top and a bottom. You need a pitcher and a catcher. You need a masculine, feminine for something interesting to happen. And all we, white straight couples are out there going, how come nothing interesting ever happens around here? So anyway, that's just kind of my opinion and projection about it. But yeah, teaching men. So for example, to answer your question, how can I teach men to do it? Here's where I start. I tell the guy, number one, don't be too available. Have guy friends, get connection with men rather than seeking your approval from women. Because as long as you're seeking approval from women, you'll probably play it safe. You won't do anything that might create what you perceive as a negative reaction. Don't be too available. If she sends you a message, don't message her right back. If she calls you, don't answer the phone. And they go, isn't that playing games? And I go, no, not really. It's actually giving her what she wants. If you answer the phone as soon as she calls, there's no tension, right? You're there, you're talking to her, right? And maybe she's even dissipating tension because she can tell you all these things that she's feeling tension about that she wants to get out of her. But what if you don't answer right away? She's going, where is he? What's he doing? How come he didn't pick up the phone? How come he didn't answer? That's tension. There's something going on. And the guy's going, that's good. And I go, believe me, trust me, it's good. When the guy, he likes a girl, so he's sending her, blowing her phone up with messages, and all of a sudden she gets distant, right? She's not feeling any tension. I said, lean back, right? Just lean back a little bit. Give her a chance to, lean in and move towards you. And then don't reply right back when she messages you. And again, it'd be easy. Well, that's game playing. I actually think it's just a more conscious interaction that creates an emotional tension that can make a relationship more enjoyable, more of an adventure, not just this dull routine, do what we did yesterday and just take the garbage out together and, call that, exciting relationship. Now, so those are just a few little tips I give. Then I try to explain why those are meaningful to most feminine creatures. But one I tell every guy, and I taught my sons, stepsons to do this. I teach men to do it, is tell the woman you're going to open the door for her. Now, I know that's kind of this chivalrous, outdated kind of thing, but I've always had amazing experience. I tell them, any new woman in my life, wait for me. I'll open your door. Getting in and out of the car, going in and out of the house. I do it with my mother. Well, first time I did it with my mother, I said, wait, I'll come open your door. This was maybe 10 years or so ago. And She said, well, if I was waiting for your dad to open my door, I'd still be waiting. And he's been dead about 12 years. And I go, yeah, I get that, Mom. And, I taught my granddaughter that. And when she was like 4 or 5, she would like make a game of it and try to bounce out of the car before I could get around and open her door. Now at 17 going on 18, she waits. I took my stepdaughter, my wife was out of town this weekend. So I took my stepdaughter, who's 16, took her out to dinner a couple times this week. And she waits for me to come open the door and let her out. My son will open the door for his mother if they're in the same vehicle. What it does is it provides a sense of leadership and safety and security and consistency that the woman gets to feel like the princess, the queen, the reina, to where, okay, my man's opening my door, closing it. And it creates this sense of security. I can trust him to pay attention and open. I tell guys, don't train your partner to wait for you to open the door and then you forget and walk off and leave her sitting there. Or you go and get in your side, she's standing outside the door waiting, right? That will not go well. If you train her to wait, now see that creates just some dominance and submission. Not in a, I get those words are kind of evil nowadays, but it creates a tension, the yin and the yang. And that if the guy says, wait for me to open your door, and the woman waits, there's a tension there, a polarity between masculine and feminine that now can be expanded and played with and have an adventure with. It's not about the guy being controlling or getting his way. It's about providing a container that the female partner can anticipate that, he will be showing up and paying attention. Most women don't expect the man in their life to show up and pay attention. They don't. Watch most couples walking around. They don't even walk close to each other. The guy's not holding her hand. He's not opening the doors. He's not leading her across a crosswalk. Again, does a woman need him to do that? No, they don't. In general, have I found women like it when the man pays that kind of attention? Yes, they do. And they watch and they go, that guy isn't, helping his woman across the street. That guy's not opening. Women start noticing the men who don't do it once they've experienced a man who does. Now, again, I'm putting some just ideas and principles and generalities out there, but I tell guys, play with it, experiment with it, open your mind to the fact that, and guys, when I said, well, isn't opening your door being a nice guy? I said, it's being a good human being, but it's not being the nice guy seeking her approval, because for most men are afraid to say, wait for me, I'll open your door, because I think the woman's going to think he's a controlling asshole, right? Just because he's saying, wait for me to open the door. So it's a way that you set the tone and create some polarity. And in that polarity is some energy that lights a spark in the female creature, the feminine creature in that relationship.
Wow. Okay.
We could talk hours about it. I've got a multi-hour video course on it.
Well, what you're saying there about, creating emotional tension and everything, you're saying like the response you might get to that is that people are saying, oh, you're just playing games and all the rest. And it's like, maybe, but also maybe it's just a higher level, because you're acknowledging that human beings are not just rational creatures, we're emotional creatures as well. So it's a different
Sure.
level of communication. You could argue it's a higher level of communication, but anyway, Robert, we could talk for hours with this, but
We could.
I've got to go actually. But what I wanted to ask, where can people learn more about your work? You're building an online course now on
Well,
emotional tension.
yeah, I have several courses. I have one on positive emotional tension. I have one called Nice Guys Don't Finish Last. They rot in middle management. It's about work and career. I have one called All the Way In, about leading in relationship. And another one called The Ruminating Brain. Again, I mentioned about people whose minds spin all the time in painful ways. Go to drglover.com, just drglover.com. I have my podcast there. I have courses. I have my workshops there. My other website is integrationnation.net. That's my men's membership program that we launched a year ago this month. It's a worldwide membership program for men. We're access to over 55 calls a month, in-person meetups. So we just a lot going on to help men connect with other men. Because I don't know if I specifically mentioned this, but I think that is one of the most powerful things a nice guy can do in his own progress and recovery is connect with men. Because most nice guys are disconnected from their fathers, disconnected from other men, disconnected from their own masculinity, seeking the approval of women. So I did most of my early work on my work nice guys around in a men's group, 12-step group, 5 years in a group of men around sexual shame. I've been in a men's program for 6 or 7 years that I participate in for me. I was leading 5 men's groups a week when I was in private practice back in Seattle. So I'm a big believer that men do their best work, do their deepest connection, learn how to live their best lives in that context with men. So integrationnation.net is my men's membership program.
Fantastic, Robert. Well, you're doing great work, important work, and it's been such a delight speaking with you today. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the invitation. And yeah, I'm coming to Dublin. I'm committing. I'll be there. I'll let you know when I'm on my way. We'll
I
go
will
play
see you there.
football. I'll watch you play football.
Sounds good.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.